The title of the 9th chapter is Devotion by Means of the Kingly Knowledge and the Kingly Mystery. The word kingly means of course the highest, so that if the title had been written in our time it would have read the highest knowledge and the deepest mystery. That any book or system of thought should purport to afford the means by which such universal knowledge may be gained is a fact which demands the attention of every intelligent mind. A claim so great may not be lightly brushed aside as unworthy of deep consideration. Thinkers everywhere admit that what is needed in the world is a self-evidently true basis for thought and action. They realize that our sciences, philosophies, and religions are attempts, more or less sincere, to obtain such a basis, but are being continually confronted with the fact that none of these supply a sure foundation for the peace, happiness, and true progress of mankind. It is realized, for instance, that our modern modes of thought are based upon and applied to material existence and external appearances, all of these being the effects of unseen causes, and that where attempt is made to fathom the unseen, material existence is taken as the cause and the unseen as the effect, with no perceptible gain in the direction of an understanding of life or its purpose. It is interesting to note that the modern basis of thought and action is the reverse of that of the ancient sages, and that whereas our ways of thinking leave us in the dark, the ways of the ancients throw a clear light upon all our problems. Let us therefore study the wisdom of the past, that we may go forward with a clearer and more definite purpose than we now have. In this chapter, Krishna addresses his disciple Arjuna in these terms: "Unto thee who findeth no fault, I will now make known this most mysterious knowledge, coupled with the realization of it, which having known thou shalt be delivered from evil." The words "unto thee who findeth no fault" mean that Arjuna is recognized as one who understands that law rules in everything and every circumstance, and that nothing can come to him of good or of evil but that of which he himself was the cause. Thus he accepted the good without exultation and the evil without complaint. In other words, Arjuna was equal-minded in pain or pleasure, joy or sorrow, and stood steady to suffer or enjoy whatever the higher self had in store for him by way of experience or discipline. Thus, at the outset, Krishna propounds and Arjuna accepts the rule of law as a necessary step towards further enlightenment. The term knowledge, as used here, has a greater meaning than we are accustomed to give it, for we would esteem as knowledge an all-round acquaintance with religions, philosophies, arts, sciences, and history as so far recorded, together with that which our senses give us in regard to the external material world. It is generally held, for instance, that one cannot know the constituents or properties of a piece of stone without mechanical or chemical aids applied directly to the object, and that nothing can be known of the thoughts or feelings of another unless expressed in words or acts, whereas the knowledge spoken of by Krishna implies a full identification of the mind, or thinking power, with whatever subject or object it may be directed to, which concentration enables the perceiver to cognize all the inherent qualities of the subject or object, as well as all incidental peculiarities, and know all about its nature. The possibility of such all-knowingness is not admitted by the leaders of thought and men of our day, whose process is based upon reasoning from particulars to universals, from effects to probable cause, and who are content to erect ever-changing hypotheses. Their process of reasoning is one which, although more refined and expanded, is the same as that used by our savage races. The sages of old, through experience gained from many civilizations, had learned to begin with universals, the plane of causation, and had finally come to see, understand, and use the true process after numberless testings and verifications. It is the result of this acquired wisdom that Krishna imparts to Arjuna as rapidly as his advancing intelligence will permit. It is this wisdom and its results that are portrayed in the secret doctrine, or theosophy. So, if the student is to understand the Bhagavad Gita, he must begin with the universals, and with the universal ever in mind expand into all particulars. Take the opening sentence of the second paragraph of this chapter. Quote, "All the universe is pervaded by me in my invisible form. All things exist in me, but I do not exist in them." Unquote. Here Krishna speaks as the omnipresent spirit, which is in all beings, but which is fully realized in such beings as Krishna, Christ, and others who have appeared in the world of men. When Krishna uses the personal pronoun throughout the Gita, he is not referring to his own personality, but to the self of all. So the above sentence may be read, "All this universe is pervaded and sustained by the one self, the omnipresent spirit. As it is the self and perceiver in all forms, it cannot be seen externally. Because of it, all forms exist, but it is not dependent upon form or forms. These are dependent upon it." In this sentence is contained an expression of the basic universal principle, the cause and sustainer of all that was, is, or ever shall be, and without which nothing exists. Being universal or omnipresent and infinite, no form of thought can define it. Yet mankind has ever attempted to define the infinite by their finite conceptions of deity. Hence the many gods of different times and peoples, man-made idols every one of them, whether they be mental or physical. It is these man-made conceptions of deity that have ever tended to erect and sustain divisions between peoples. Tribal and national gods deny and frustrate a realization of universal brotherhood. The ancient teaching, which Krishna once more enunciates, is that all forms of every kind proceed from one universal source. The life of each is hidden in and sustained by that source, the one life. The power to perceive and expand its range of perception and expression is the same in all beings and forms. The degrees of perception and expression are shown in the innumerable classes of beings. It is this power that is behind all evolution, the unfolding from within outwards. Krishna goes on to present the law under which all beings evolve in the words, "O son of Kunti, at the end of a kalpa all things return unto my nature, and then again at the beginning of another kalpa I cause them to evolve again." A kalpa means a great age or period, and the law referred to is what is spoken of in the secret doctrine as the law of periodicity, or the law of cycles. Everywhere in nature we find this law in operation, as in day and night, summer and winter, life and death, inbreathing and outbreathing, the systole and diastole of the heart, sowing and reaping. The general name for this universal law is karma, which means action and reaction, cause and effect. It applies to all beings and all planes. An ancient aphorism says, "There is no karma unless there is a being to make it or feel its effect." Hence all manifestation is the result of karmic action by beings of every grade in their interaction and interrelation. The phrase, "I cause them to evolve again," carries with it the meaning that each period of manifestation, great or small, is followed by another on the basis of the experience gained. That which causes them to evolve again is the self of all, which is also the self of each, or, as it has been poetically called, the great breath, with its great periodical recurrent outbreathings and inbreathings. Ceaseless pulsation may be said to be its one attribute. It is this essential nature which is meant in the phrase, I emanate again and again this whole assemblage of beings without their will by the power of the material essence. Without their will may be understood by considering that no human being is in a body because he, as such, desired to be, nor does he leave his body because he desires to. The impelling force proceeds from the inner self, the real man. By the power of the material essence may be understood by considering the statement that spirit and matter are coexistent and co-eternal. By matter is meant primordial substance from which all differentiations in matter are produced by conscious actions of beings of different grades. I am as one who sitteth indifferent means that the oneself is not involved in any or all forms of manifestation, but ever remains the spectator, the admonisher, the sustainer, the enjoyer, and also the highest soul. Just as each one may say, I was in a child body and I had experiences pertaining to that state. I passed through the changes of body and circumstance up to the present, and will pass through all changes to come, but I remain the same unchanging identity throughout all conditions. The deluded despise me in human form, being unacquainted with my real nature as Lord of all things. The One Self is the self of all beings. The Upanishads say that the self shines in all, but in all it does not shine forth. Krishna says that the deluded fail to recognize this self, and judging from appearances and arbitrary classifications maintain a separateness. So acting, they set in motion causes that produce similar effects, in other words, bad karma. The remainder of the chapter is devoted to presentations of the right understanding of self and its results, as well as the results of a false or imperfect understanding. Krishna's teaching throughout emphasizes the statement that there is but one spirit and not several, the same spirit animating all beings and sustaining all. The same power to perceive is possessed by all alike. The differences in beings consist in the range of perception which has been acquired through evolution, and this applies to all lives below man, to man himself, and to all beings higher than man. In the book The Voice of the Silence, it is said that mind is like a mirror, it gathers dust while it reflects. And in other writings, mind is spoken of as the mirror of the soul. We cannot fail to see that we act in accordance with the ideas of life that we hold, that what we call our mind is a number of ideas held by us as a basis for thought and action, that we change ideas from time to time, as we find occasions for such change, but that at all times we act from the basis of ideas presently held. The reason for the differences between human beings is the false, imperfect, or true ideas which form the basis of thought or action. We are prone to accept and hold only such ideas as are in accord with our personal desires. Krishna presents an example of what, among us, would be called a good desire, that of those enlightened in the Vedas, whose desire is for a personal enjoyment of heaven. These, he says, obtain and enjoy that heaven for a period of time proportionate to their merits, and then they sink back to mortal birth. He concludes by saying, thus, those who long for the accomplishment of desires following the Vedas obtain a happiness which comes and goes. But for those who, thinking of me as identical with all, constantly worship me, I bear the burden of the responsibility of their happiness. The words constantly worship me have an explanation further on in the chapter where he says, whatever thou doest, O son of Kunti, whatever thou eatest, whatever thou sacrificest, whatever thou givest, whatever mortification thou performest, commit each unto me. The real worship is devotion to an ideal. Here the self of all is the ideal, and the action indicated is to think and act for and as the one self in all things, without self-interest in the results. We are not attached to results by our acts, but by our thoughts. Freedom comes from a renunciation of self-interest in the fruit of actions. All of the above is included in Krishna's closing injunction: having obtained this finite, joyless world, worship me, serve me, fix heart and mind on me, be my servant, my adorer, prostrate thyself before me, and thus, united unto me, at rest thou shalt go unto me.